Good morning. I will try not to do that again.
Everybody on Zoom is awake now.
Okay, good. That's good. And my family is probably on Zoom, so that's really cool. And somebody please remember to feed the dog. All right, so.
That was under announcements.
That goes under announcements. So it is a joy, of course, to be here with you today on this relative cold snap of a weekend we're having. So I thank you for having me back since I had such a great experience a few weeks ago. If you weren't here the first time I spoke at Channing in July, my name is Jessica Maynard, and I look forward to meeting you if I have not. Now, as is my habit, I begin with a brief meditation to kind of help me center myself and engage the divine, and of course you are welcome to join me if you'd like. Sacred breath, fill me. Spirit of love, infuse my words. Wisdom, guide our thoughts toward those that would uphold our shared purpose of serving our community through loving and supporting one another. Source of life, illumine our hearts to recognize the divine in each other. I have a few water bottles that somehow managed to provide kind of a unique perspective, insight into parts of my personality by means of the stickers on them. And one of my favorites, and of course I meant to bring this particular water bottle with me, but I managed to get out the house without it. But one of my favorite stickers lives on the blue water bottle that I used to take to school, and it reads, "Hang on, let me overthink this." Yep. I am a chronic overthinker, and I know I'm not alone. I see a few heads nodding. You're like, yeah, I get it. So, from time to time, it does get me in trouble, especially if I overthink out loud, which can sound kind of like an unhinged Abbott and Costello routine, but with only one voice examining 6 to 8 facets of whatever issue is at hand. And strangely, my family has not managed to capitalize on this by selling tickets. I'm sure it's very entertaining. But I've discovered that one of the downsides of speaking here and only premiering one sermon in a month is that I have a lot of time to overthink the theme. So by the time I'm actually standing here in the pulpit, I haven't only taken the theme on a mental merry-go-round a few times, I have constructed an entire theme park for it, exploring each facet, each angle, and each story in so many different directions that it almost requires a map, like the kind they used to hand out at Six Flags before we all had apps on our phones. And Brotherhood has taken me on quite a ride, I'll admit. On the one hand, I don't love this word, quite honestly, because it's unnecessarily gendered. As a female, I have no use for brotherhood because it excludes outset. The most common meaning, as still given in the mainstream dictionaries, refers to the state of being brothers specifically, and I will never be one. If you get the Channing channel, though, Eva shared some of her beautiful thoughts on this very thing. She writes, "Brotherhood at Channing is a community practice, a shared spirit, a way of living that says we're in this together. It's for every gender, every age, every person who believes that kindness is better when it's shared." I appreciate that so much. Because on the other hand, I absolutely love the concept of this word, especially when we put it in a kind of a framework that dismisses its gendered origin and all the baggage that could carry. And we think of it as simply belonging to each other like family. Without getting hung up on the semantics, that's what we're going to do today. I especially appreciate thinking of brotherhood as an extension of the love that is at the core of our shared values. And so it naturally follows connection, which was our theme, if you remember, last month. And this kind of intentional practice of brotherhood goes a bit beyond community, and it denotes a tighter, more, I guess, indelible bond. Most of us are members of several communities, right? But we belong to very few families. One thing you may not know about me yet, because honestly, you don't know a lot of things about me yet, but hang on, because you'll get to know very many more things. But you don't know that I'm a big sucker for sports movies. I am the least athletic person in the world, but I love sports movies. Well, some of my favorites are A League of Their Own. Actually, that's one of my top 5 favorite movies of ever. I also love Remember the Titans and The Replacements for very different reasons. But what appeals to me most about sports movies is that they typically tell a story of a whole bunch of individuals with their own backgrounds and agendas and circumstances and abilities, and they're all coming together as a cohesive unit to meet whatever challenge lies before them. Will probably not surprise you in the least, then, that one of my favorite TV series centers around sports as well. Ted Lasso. If you know, you know. If you're not familiar with Ted Lasso, it first came along in 2020, right when we needed it most. It tells the story of, well, Ted Lasso, who is a Division II college football coach from Kansas, who, for a variety of reasons, takes a job in London coaching a professional football, soccer team. Now, without dropping any spoilers, Ted Lasso and his assistant coach, Beard, take on an underperforming team of scrappy soccer players, transforming them into nothing short of a family by the end of season 3. Now, since John and I have been rewatching Ted Lasso in anticipation of the new season, which starts this Wednesday, it's been on my brain. It occurred to me this last week that this show exemplifies belonging to each other like family, as well as the intentional practice that leads to that sort of belonging. See, from the very first meeting with his team, Ted Lasso cultivates an environment in which every player, as well as the kit man and the team owner, and, well, one of the players' girlfriends, every person attached to that team feels valued and connected. And one big example that I think I can give away without, well, that I can talk about without giving away any spoilers, is one of my favorite episodes, which is the Christmas episode, in which the team's operation manager talks about how he usually holds a Christmas dinner for all of the players who are far away from home and therefore don't have any family to go to. And he says, usually we only get about 2 players joining us. But in this particular episode, when we reach the scene about the current Christmas dinner, almost every player attends, bringing potluck in hand, and they enjoy a celebratory family-style dinner together that involves a surfboard and a bunch of Nerf guns. And it's beautiful. Of course, Ted Lasso as a show is brilliantly written with undeniably human characters, flaws and all. And that's one of the things I love about it. And it's very expertly acted and produced. It's won Emmy Awards and Golden Globes, and it's amassed a fan following that few TV series can hope to achieve. But as I thought more about why it really spoke to me, as an example of brotherhood, it occurred to me that it's because the conflicts within the story arc have just as much to teach us. In the first 3 seasons, we see the team coming together, of course. But we also see what happens to 2 individuals who grapple with their own belonging in the characters of Jamie Tart, who really doesn't want to belong, who sees himself as not part of the team. And then also Nate the Kit Man, who begins to feel excluded. And that's largely due to his own ego. But we see the journey that that takes him on. That not belonging is as profound in some cases as belonging. There's probably just as good a time as any to think about what belonging really means and why we should care about it. One article from the Australian Journal of Medicine defines belonging as the subjective feeling of deep connection with social groups, physical places, and individual and collective experiences, and goes on to say that belonging is a fundamental human need that predicts numerous mental, physical, social, economic, and behavioral outcomes. In fact, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, belonging is right there in the middle. And it is third only to physiological needs and safety. So, belonging is crucial to our mental, physical, spiritual well-being. And if you think for just a moment about your own experiences, where do you belong? What does belonging feel like to you? It occurs to me also that 2 very important figures in the world's most prominent religions came from backgrounds of otherhood. So we've talked a little bit, Michelle talked about her spiritual transformation, and Hal talked about serving on a board with members of so many other religious traditions. So I think it's important to point out here that Jesus was the son of a carpenter, and there is a scripture that says, when did anything good ever come out of Nazareth? He's an outsider. And Ishmael, who is considered the patriarch of Islam, was the son of Hagar, who was Abraham's slave woman, who was literally cast out into the wilderness. And I don't think this is any coincidence, and I'm sure that books have been written about how the experience of otherhood, being other, informed the teachings of both Christianity and Islam. Because these are very human experiences, right? What we do with these experiences and how we respond to the other says a great deal about who we are. I don't know about you, but I have been in many places where I didn't belong. I've certainly wanted to belong, or I thought that I should belong, but for one reason or another, I didn't. And if I wanted to, I bet we could think for just a few minutes and really remember not belonging. Particularly, they were around our teenage years. I have 4 teenagers at home, and I can tell you that belonging has been a theme at our house for several years. And as a teacher, I think a lot about belonging because all the wisdom suggests that students will learn better when they feel like they belong. Now, in the interest of our collective mental health, we're not going to think too hard about not belonging, because we could go down a rabbit hole that probably wouldn't be very joyous at all. But if we think about it just enough that we have a good grasp on what that feels like, well, that's the experience of otherhood. And if we practice brotherhood in a way that does not open the circle wide enough to allow others to join in and to welcome and include everyone, then we risk othering people, which is the opposite of what we should be about. I've always found it valuable to ponder why we are here. Why are we here? Why do we do this? Why do we gather in community on Sunday mornings, sometimes on Friday nights? I think when we wonder that, we kind of get at the heart of our reasons for gathering in this familyhood. Now, I have long held that any spiritual community or practice that does not make us more loving, more inclusive, more accepting, and more generous isn't worth engaging. Nobody needs that. We don't need to become more exclusive. We don't need to draw more solid lines in the sand. Our culture has enough of those things. I have said before, lately, I will say to anybody who will listen, one of the things I appreciate most about the UUA is the core of love that is enacted through service, interdependence, generosity, and pluralism, regardless of our individual beliefs and differences thereof. In my relatively short time in this particular faith community, I've certainly seen this in action. I pay attention to the things that are going on around here. Like a couple of examples I can think of, like that I know that Dale has given Michelle a ride to certain events when she was recovering from surgery. Dale helps Michelle so that Michelle can heal and go and be ready to care for her students in a couple of weeks. Dave goes to an art show in which William is exhibiting and encourages Dale and says to Dale in that way, "You're important to me." Not Dale, sorry, William, yes. Okay, so, but in that way that Dave shows up for William, William can then show up for all the students that he teaches in all the different ways that he does it. See, this is the point. We take care of each other so that we can take care of the other. See, the good news is this. You don't have to coach a professional soccer team to practice brotherhood. And in my case, that's a really good thing because that would be one really bad soccer team. We practice this kind of brotherhood, this familyhood, this belonging in all the ways that Eva mentioned and more. We come together as a community to practice this and experience it. You may have heard that hurt people hurt people. The opposite of that is true. Loved people love people. Included people include people. And what we practice here, brotherhood, familyhood, inclusion, belonging, that equips us to go and do likewise outside this fellowship. May it be so. I offer these words by the grace of God in the spirit of peace and in the name of love.